All right, we are live.
All right, good morning. It is 9:30. We'll call to order the monthly meeting of the Insurance Committee. I'd like to start off with, are there any committee members or county board members on?
Somebody's on. I think Beth is on.
Okay, we have one person. Okay, Beth? Okay, we have that time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll do a roll call of committee members that are present. We have Mr. Walsh, Mr. Faber, Ms. Pottinger, and Ms. Bush. Minutes from the last month's
Hey,
meeting.
Alan, I think somebody else joined the Webex. Do you want to ask?
Who else do we have on WebEx?
Somebody else joined the Webex. Do you want to ask?
Who else do we have on WebEx?
Mike Kappa.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, minutes have been sent out. If anyone would like to make a motion to accept them, please on file.
Tina?
Tina or Kendra? Okay. Favor?
Hi.
Opposed?
Aye.
The minutes are on file.
Okay, somebody else joined the Webex, Alan, if you'd like to
We
ask?
got three.
Pardon?
We have a third.
Somebody else joined.
The party that just joined WebEx.
Hi, Alan, it's Brandon.
Okay, Brian, thank you. We just approved the minutes. Kurt, did you finish the bills? Mike, whenever you're ready.
Sir. Good morning. In front of you is a packet, so we're going to start with the right-hand side of the folder. To review the financials. To start off with. Did everybody give me okay? So first is the aggregate report, which again is a picture through October of how the plan has run compared to expected. And expected, as you recall, each year, we come up with expected rates, the underwriters do, and maximum rates. And we also come up with premiums as a result of the expected rates. So we are currently, as far as members, the average enrollment, the members, the belly button have gone down a little bit. The number of employees have remained basically the same, 656. Went up by 2. The spend so far this year is up 3.4% versus last year. However, that doesn't mean we're over budget. That means that's what the budget, when it gets down below on an expected basis by the yellow, we're running actually 96% of expected, which is about 4% better. Our large claimants are there in the center. Those are claimants over 75,000. We've had 12 so far this year. Last year, for the same time period, we had 11. We're running a little bit better. So our spend, or our budget versus budget, we're on track. 96% of it. Benchmarks, year to date, we're at 14,930 per employee. The expected was 15,509. The per capita per member, the expected was 3,495. We're running 8,173. Again, versus other benchmarks, the industry, government, we're in pretty good shape there. Any questions on that? Last year, by December 31st, we ended up with 18 large claimants over 75,000. Some just breaching that, if you take a look over to the far right of that large claimant column. And it identifies who's retiree and who's active. And again, that was last year's assessment. On the left-hand side is the number of retirees and then versus the actives, as far as large claimants. Questions?
Hey, Mike, hold on a second.
Yeah.
We need to ask them to mute their phones.
Okay, for the members that are attending via Webex, could you please mute your phones? We're getting a lot of background noise unless you're going to be speaking. Okay, we're still getting background noise. I'd ask if everyone could mute their phones for Webex.
She can mute them.
Yeah.
If they're not gonna do it, she can do it. Because I just texted Beth to ask her if she can hear. Because if someone's noise is coming over it, it's gonna block anything that people can hear.
It does. It's
So, I'm waiting for it to answer me.
I'll have to mute all then, because I don't know who's who.
Okay, for the people on Webex, can you please mute your telephones?
Well, that one, either they hung up or.
Yeah, that's, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Mike.
That's your option.
It's okay. The next exhibit is the pharmacy spend exhibit for usage patterns. Again, we look at several key areas here. The generic dispensing rate. It's at about 86% for year to date. Last year, we were running at about 87%, so we'll dig into that a little bit. The formulary compliance is very good though, it's at 99%. Generic substitution rate is at 98%. All of those are very favorable. Again, specialty drugs, this is a category that will continue to be there going forward. They account for about 1% of claims or scripts, but about 44% of your pharmacy. So it's, we're going to talk about pharmacy here in a minute, some other alternatives that we can take a look at for next year. The types of drugs that are specialty are on the next page. In the circles, graphs towards the bottom on the left, we have 15 claimants that take specialty drugs anywhere from autoimmune to cancer, blood modifiers. These are all common categories of specialty drugs. These are all common categories of specialty drugs. Most commonly used is Humira and Stelara. The cost of those 15 claimants amounted to 108 prescriptions, $569,000. Mentioned last time we would update you on the retiree spend. And it's the next few pages. Any questions on that pharmacy? The Retiree Analytics, this is again primarily for members under age 65 that are on the plan. And we go back a few years, back to 2015, 2014. And the category that we're going to look at primarily is retirees less than 65. And we're going to look at the third column from the right, the per capita per employee. And you can see, and we're going to compare that to active, so the active members. So back in 2014-15, there was quite a distance between retiree per capita. In 2015-16, that narrowed. it kind of gained again in 2016-17, so it's a vulnerable spot. On page 3 at the bottom, we're moving into 2018. And again, that's all pretty consistent. Where it spiked again was 2019. In 2020, we're currently a bit running high as well, 21,426 per capita per employee versus active members of 17,000. If we looked at it on a per member basis, that's per belly button, it's going to be high because those are higher claimants, and we would be comparing that to families and children. So it's something that's still out there. We drilled into it a little bit further with the next 3 exhibits. So in 2020, we just kind of showed you where the dollars are being spent. And in 2020, if you compare that, if you can pull the other two out, besides it, 19 and 18, you'll see that we had much more severity of claims in 2019 and 2018. So we had some claimants that were up to $400,000+ in 2018, 2019 as well. And this year, year to date, we're dealing with a high of 170,000 to at 100,000, and they drop off quite a bit. So we still don't have a perfect plan to replace this. There's nobody in the marketplace that offers a pre-65 retiree program. However, you should know that the individual options are becoming more and more robust. In the next year, we'll see some type of incentive program to incent pre-65 retirees walking the plan. Again, they're a higher cost. They're basically affecting the active members' costs as a result. It is something that everybody's looking for, a solution. It was there several years ago, then the individual market dried up a bit. Now it's again reversing, and we'll certainly see what impact the new administration will have on that. Yes, sir.
I hear them advertised on the radio, and so these plans, these new individual plans, are the result of something that happened in Washington. But their reduced cost, is that because they have eliminated some coverages?
So what you're possibly referring to is the post-65 retirees, so that'd be Medicare Advantage.
No, but before, there's plans out there where they advertise and can save you 50% or no. And I know the church one, I understand that one, but there's private carriers too that are coming into the market that have been released, and I assume there are some coverages that others aren't getting released.
Yeah, so you have to be careful with it. There's a thing called short-term policies that you could renew for like 3 years. Those probably will change under the new administration. Those do not typically cover pre-X. They don't cover necessarily all the ACA, essential health benefits. So they're going to be skinny down a little bit. So it's a much more competitive market. I won't say it's more competitive than your current plan, but members might find an acceptable option there. And again, if given some incentive from the county to waive off coverage, a little bit different than how you're doing it right now for individuals, they might take a look at that a little bit closer. And we would certainly have an arm to help them research that, whether they live here or across the country. The only other thing I'm hearing at 50% is more on the Medicare Advantage side. And that's purely because that's a government and private sector partnership where it's working. And it does involve smaller networks, though, that could potentially be kind of determined by where your location is at. as to whether it's a good fit or not.
But those are post 65.
Yeah, those are post 65, but I mean, if you have some examples, I'd certainly love to research that. I mean, it's all about getting people affordable coverage and accessible coverage. And if there's something out there that's that good, I should know about it. So I have plenty of people that could use it then, if it's something valid. But for most case, any individual policies on the insurance exchange, though, typically have to have all the essential health benefits. They have to cover 3X, et cetera, et cetera. So, although, again, we expect more.
On it too, it looks like from the years going, we jump in numbers too. We're like at 20 and then we're like at 13 in the. So maybe is our cost going up because we got more people on it too?
Your costs are impacted, no, it's done on a per capita basis.
Oh, it
so,
is, okay.
Yeah, it kind of takes that noise out of it. So it's.
It's more
but
just on the
there-
claims then.
I'm sorry?
It's more on the claims then.
It is.
Okay.
It is, so it's they're, not that there's more of them, it's just that they're more sizable, but again, when we take a look at, keep in mind, when we did the math on the per capitas, we do stop, so even though that I showed you, we had a few claimants at 408,000, 445. When we do the per capita math on this other report, retiree, we stop it at your stop loss.
Oh,
So if you have a stop loss, if you had it at 115,000 at one time, it's listed as a sub-note on that retiree summary.
okay, yeah, down your maxes out. Okay.
So if you had a $125,000 stop loss, even though it was a $400,000 claim, we stopped it at 100. A larger claim base there, or larger dollar claim base that's rising again. It'll always be a challenge. We did the math on these. If you just start to look at the 2021, there's a thing called a Retiree Health Reimbursement Arrangement, which makes these dollars on a pre-tax basis. So we did the math on the very bottom of it. It says assumes 20% migration. So the top 20 claimants, their spend, $1,169,000. The middle 20 is 87,000. The bottom is 1,000. The retiree premiums that they pay is there, and the difference. So we said, well, what if there was an offer of $5,000 per year until someone reached age 65, dropped out of the plan? We said, again, at 20%, that spend would be about $100,000 per year. If it's the middle 20, a little bit worse than breakeven. So, and then if it's the bottom 20, you'd be in the red. So it just means the lowest cost claimants you gave too much to incentivize the plan versus their claimants. So but there's another part of this scenario. Our underwriters would say if someone reaches retirement, it typically is going to be a 50 or 55 age, and that's always a higher risk age no matter what. Whether they show up as a claim down here, or it's something yet to come, or yet to happen. It may never happen, but it's a higher risk category. So some underwriters look at that and say it's helpful that you thin down that group of participants. Yes, sir.
So this report is all our employees stratified from highest down, inclusive of retirees?
It's just retirees under age 65.
Okay, but the total population and stratified by claim paid.
Yeah, so it's not your total population, it's just retirees under age 65, of which there's, again, 2 pages here full of.
This is all.
This is all of them, under age 65 that are retired.
And this is their actual experience through October 31st.
That's correct. And again, it gives you the claims paid, whether that's a subscriber is a single employee plus spouse. So we have that categorized there where the claims are.
But the subscriber and the spouse are
Two people.
not separated.
No, their total claims are there.
Okay. But you could separate it if you had to.
Good, yeah. So this is something that we're still watching. It's certainly something that we don't see for this January 1st, but possibly all of these things I'm going to talk about are, again, with what's going on in Washington right now and a lot of conversations about healthcare. We're watching that very, very actively to see any changes and then to inform our clients of that. There's a lot of discussion on pharmacy, which I'm going to talk about next. So this is just, it's not meant for an action point with you at this point. It's just, again, to fill in, since we last reviewed, it's still out there. It's still an impact to your plan. Retirees cost more than active members. And it's just, again, more of a function of age when chronic conditions kind of take place a little stronger.
This second,
Yeah, the second one is
so this is
2019.
retired.
So it's up on top, the paid claims. So it's 2020, and then 2019, and then 2018.
Oh, it's the same group of people.
Well, it's who's ever retiree,
Okay.
just top
All these
down,
reports are the same.
same purposes. Yeah,
Okay.
all under 65 retirees. There are encrypted subscriber numbers there, so they're probably different in order on each page. So we don't know who these individuals are. Okay,
Hey, Alan?
Yes, Brian?
I just say that we need to watch, just free money out and having people bail off the health insurance, because I think our previous picture with this, we did that in the past, we contract, and because you have to negotiate across the board with everyone, the people that weren't on the health insurance would then sign up at the last minute, or for them for the pay. So it became quite a hassle. So unless there's a concrete way for us to get people to buy them off the health insurance, I don't see any positive about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
thanks. Yeah, no, it makes sense. We certainly would want to track back a group to them and send off. But if that was the point, so it's something that's being discussed out there in every public sector account that we have, just so we're not missing anything for you. Just keep getting over. The next, on the left-hand side, I mentioned about talking about pharmacy. So we have some limits with pharmacy, so there's two attachments that says RX managed up at the top. It says PPO and the HSA. So these are a year run of pharmacy claims. And what we did here, every group is saying, and pharmacy costs are 25 to 30% of our total spend. How do we control that? We have 85% of our scripts are generic, but that only accounts for 15 to 20% of the pharmacy spend, even with such a large number. And then the specialty drugs accounts for 1% of scripts, but it's 40% of the spend. So we have a sandwich in between them, which are called name brand drugs, that right now are adding a lot of cost to our plan still. So we have had clients looking for solutions for that. And what we've come up with is a group called RX Manage, who may have approached you before on this. RX Manage is an international pharmacy. And the way this works is it's a voluntary program for the members. It's primarily for the PPO members. And it basically says, we're going to, for those members that choose to use this, they pay a $0 copay for their drug. They get it through the mail. They get it through one of 4 countries, Canada, UK, Australia, or New Zealand, which are tier 1 pharmacy networks that match the US. Everything is done in English. And what these members could do is have their pharmacy or their doctor instruct their script to go to RX Manage and fill it. Why would they want to do that? Well, right now they have to pay something for their pharmacy, deductible, co-insurance, etc. And what this says, let's take a look at what this does. So page 1 of 3, the PPO up on top, a year's worth of claims. We have about 37.56% of the drugs that are being used on your plan would be able to go through this system. It's not a requirement. It's not connected to Blue Cross at all. It's not connected to your stop loss at all. But it does not cover specialty drugs. So biologic, that's more of a specialty drug, it doesn't cover. So we have brand drugs that cost your plan right now $691,000. Everybody see that?
Where are we at? I gotta get it going up.
So it's the PPO up on top, County of LaSalle,
All right, got that.
PPO,
That's what-
RX Manage. And what we're looking at here is brand drugs on the
Okay.
far left column.
Okay.
And then in the middle, 2-3 columns over, it says RX Manage percent, 37.56. So those drugs have an alternative that RX Manage could fill. Currently, your plan spends $691,000 on it. Through RX Manage, they could save $185,000. Again, that's everybody using it. It's voluntary. It's not something mandated. So why the difference in cost? So if we take a look at page 3 of 3, so it's stapled at the bottom there. So these are all the drugs that were discovered that cost a lot less. So the plan cost, so if you take a look at the total cost column, $330,845. The plan cost, because the members pay co-pays or co-insurance, the plan pays $291 on these drugs. Their price, International Pharmacy, is $105,000. So the plan savings would be $224,904. For the total savings, the plan savings would be $185. And that's with the member paying $0 for it. Why would I want to do that? Let's go back to page 2 of 3 at the top. Advair, one of the most popular drugs out there. Right now, we have 4 members taking it. The total plan cost is $7,171. The international pharmacy cost would be $2,398. Total savings, $5,596. Plan savings, $4,773. So you'd be looking at the plan savings of $4,773. The member would pay $0 for it instead of their deductible and co-pays and co-insurance. It's something that's catching legs with our other clients, municipal accounts. Again, because it's done on a voluntary basis. I don't have to use this. Now, what does that mean to you and to the county? It's not covered by Blue Cross. We call it a bolt-on plan, bolt in another outside plan and vendor onto your current plan. So you do not have $125,000 stop loss protection on these drugs. But these are not specialty drugs, which would really kind of get to that escalation in the first place. You still pay them as a self-funded plan, but it's not through Blue Cross. It's outside directly to RX Manage. It has no fees built into this. It's an added value service, and it's mainly to help drive down your cost. We cannot technically do this on HSA plans, because HSAs right now currently have a written law that says you can't have an insurance program under the deductible. Technically, this is not an insurance program, but it's a gray area, so we do not have a lot of members that would be impacted by that. If we recommend an implementation, it would only be for the PPO members. Does that make sense? You've been following the math on this? I mean, it's a huge difference, and that's the discussion going on in Washington right now. Why do we pay more for our drugs here versus other countries? By far. And this kind of proof to it. By far. So this again, we're dealing with mail order. We're dealing with English though.
Could you repeat the countries? I think you said Canada, UK, Australia, I think there was one.
New Zealand.
New Zealand, thank
So
you.
they might have a little accent when you talk to them on the 800 number, but certainly understandable in English. So we have, again, clients moving to this on a voluntary basis. Yes, sir.
But just, because we went through this spring when all the medicines got stopped from China. And even though we're going through 4 different countries, it's their laws that are setting the prices. But every one of these drugs could still be coming from China in the very same place.
Sure.
Why don't we go to China direct and get their full discount?
Probably nobody would participate in that right now, just based on the commentaries.
But the reality is,
So
I don't know how much of that's been fixed, because nobody says, but when this all went bust, we found out that a very, very high percentage of our drugs were all coming from China.
Totally agree.
And they were going to all these other markets,
Yep.
the same drug, and it was the individual governments and whatever they were doing, setting the prices. So when people did drive to Canada to get their, what's the big drug they go there for? Diabetes.
Insulin.
For insulin.
Yeah.
It's the same insulin, but we thought they were making it in the United States and selling it cheaper in Canada, but the reality was it was all being made in China and coming to Canada and the United States. So it's still the same drug, it just, this whole China thing.
Yeah,
blew up on us.
so, and again, that's something to take into consideration. The other thing that, to take into consideration, there's, in Washington right now, President Trump just released an executive order last week that affected most favored nation pricing, but it's more for Medicare and Medicaid related pricing, not for commercial plans, to my reading anyway. President-elect Biden is also looking at similar language or something different. They're both, right now, it seems like on a race to try to fix pharma, which is fighting back, of course. And so that could take a while. This is there, and again, you could implement it anytime you want. We could wait and do it in July offering, or wait until next January.
Mike, it's optional though, right?
Yeah, it's voluntary.
Okay.
The member would have a choice to pursue it or not. And again, but it's not going to be covered by the plan design at all. It's just, there's no cost to the member for that drug. Okay. Food for thought. So that's what today's about. It's planning for next year. There's a couple other items. One's gonna be left open because I wasn't able to get data from the provider, but the other one is regarding a audit, a claims audit. And that's on the left-hand side as well. And so it's gonna look like this. And it's funny, the back looks like the front,
So you want
so
to.
go to this side over there, if you can. So this is a company that's well known for doing claims audits for health plans, called BMI claims audit, and then also on pharmacy plans. So medical plan claim audit for your group would be $21,000. Prescription claim audit would be $8,500. They have ways of setting up the cost of this to guarantee a return of that fee. That they would do it on a contingency basis that will save you at least this amount. I don't have that priced all out over here, but know that that's a possibility. But otherwise, on average, they recoup that cost and then some. And again, when you do a claims audit, it's mostly to put the claims administrator on alert that, hey, somebody else is watching. So they don't take every single claim for the past year, but they did sampling. Kind of gives you an audit timeline of how they work. Most of this would be done behind the scenes. So through the COVID time period, there would not be a lot of face-to-face or anything like that. Mostly behind the scenes that this is done. They have a new model that once they do the claims audit, the difficulty of a claims audit, just to expose this for transparency, is if and when a claims situation is found that was not paid right, the question is how do you collect it back? And who do you collect it from? So the member has to pay something possibly back. The provider certainly has to, so we've got some disruption that goes with that. Sometimes the carrier actually just makes good and gives you that whatever's found, if it's egregious, they'll work something out, and the carrier will respond back to the client in some way to cover that. They typically don't do it all, but again, the BMI is going to find stuff, is how they say. That's the question, how do we get it reimbursed? But then it's more so they say about how do we go forward? Were there things that were being processed differently? Was your plan design off? Was your summary plan description not accurate? Things like that they monitor. The other option they offer is what they call a going forward audit. It's actually, there's additional cost to it, but they would monitor your claims on a monthly basis going forward. Getting a claim feed from the carrier and take a look at that, so they could prevent something right then and now, rather than looking at something that's 2 years old or 1 year old.
Mike, could you confirm the cost?
21,000.
That our form does not say that. I see that it says 21 on yours, but ours says, compare what you got. Then I have the wrong one.
Okay, so two versions of it. I didn't realize there were two versions, I'm sorry. So what is everybody looking at? So there's one straightforward 21,000 medical claim audit. Yeah. And that's probably on the majority of them. I think what you have is the other version where they'll take a percentage of the
Okay.
savings.
Okay,
So they'll charge a lesser fee
Okay,
upfront, and then they'll take a percentage of the savings that they find.
can I have yours?
Sure.
I'll have to see if there's one.
There should
Okay.
be, yeah, it should be a clean copy.
Just for the minutes, I go back to these type of
Absolutely.
numbers.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was wondering why I had extras, and I was like, oh my gosh. So they're, is that 21,000? Okay. So, I'm sorry about that. So I did mention there's two methods of charging you. One is just a flat fee, 21,800 for pharmacy. The other one was roughly 9,500 on yours. 9,500, but then projection of about 10% of the savings they would take. And they're projecting somewhere between, what did it say, 44,000,
44 to 200.
not less upfront, but then any savings, they're taking a piece of. I mean, certainly, I would have the representative from BMI at a future meeting to discuss further if there's interest on that. And I'll forward the other copy so everybody has it with the percentage savings. Okay?
Tom?
Yeah, I would certainly like to express interest in, you know, since, you know, we do this in the insurance trust. We've done audits, that expense that we incur through workman's comp, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I think it's been successful.
It's, we don't do it often, but you have been with an administrator for a very long time, so it would possibly make sense. And again, if you do it where your outlays covered by your savings to some degree, it's a no-brainer, I guess. But I would like, again, Will Baker is one of the key people at BMI for 20 years. And I've known him, so I would certainly bring him in on a virtual call maybe for the next meeting if that makes sense for your agenda.
Alan, I would just request that if this is something you're going to consider in the new fiscal year, you have to financially account for it in the budget. The Fund 16 budget, I would have to put that in under administrative expenses if you're going to do it. So I would need an idea like today if I should have more monies put in under that Fund 16 to account for it, or you won't have the money in there. Because our administrative expense is literally only what we pay for. There's no cushion at all. It's just Horton and CureLink expense. So I would need some just direction from the committee on that in order to make sure I account for it with choice.
Okay, well, Ryan, are you still online? Mr. Dose?
You might be muted now.
No, she's still be able to hear us. Brian, are you on Webex?
Which one?
How
What's the difference? The 9,600 was for, what's the
come
difference?
and ask for
Like,
contingency on the site
Or just a different
or
rate?
an envelope
Different rate, different way of billing.
for 30,000.
I just think there's much less in it.
Well, Tina, you're on finance too.
There isn't a lot of cushion in it, contingency is required, because we cut that.
Yeah, I don't think
We'll put the answer.
we need to do more research. I mean, I know what these audits are. They go in and it's all interpretation. You interpret it one way and bill them, and they come in and interpret it a different way, and then you argue, and then everybody gets mad. And how they get paid is they agree to split the difference just so they can get their cut. I'm not pointing at you for that, but
Yeah, no, thanks.
so it has viability and it may have more viability going forward, but there's no way we can sit here and make a decision that this is good for LaSalle County right now and put it in the budget. I mean, that's how we get in trouble is,
So,
yeah, if we do it, it's something for next year and it can be a contingency if money shows up, or it can be planned that we discuss it, agree to do it, and start funding it later next year.
If
if I may. So, again, I'm not doing it justice explaining the second option. The first option was just hard dollars of payment. The second option was more of a contingency plan that they're only gonna get paid to the degree they find something. So, if I could get more clarification for you, I can't get it for this meeting, but this afternoon I could. If the bottom line is guaranteed no cost, they only get paid if they find something, does that put a different cast on it?
And I think that answers everybody's question.
Okay, so.
But again, what I just said is how it works, and it may or.
Oh, yeah, and it's a question of where does the money come from then? You know, they
Yes.
can't, is a provider gonna cough up the dollars for the member? Or are they gonna just go back to Blue Cross and say, hey, you did this wrong, you have some vulnerability here, write a check? And that's done sometimes, the
And
third party administrator.
the key is how soon they get involved. If they get involved in the first 60 days when the bill is still being submitted and interpreted, then it's a pretty clean.
Yeah.
But if they come in 90 days after the bill's paid and go back,
Well, that's what I'm saying, this is back a year and 2 years that they're looking, so those are baked already and paid. Now who's gonna cough up? So it's typically gonna be the TPA if they find something was done wrong, that is gonna make amends. To the full degree, probably not, but, to some shape. If this meeting is gonna go on a little bit longer, I can certainly try to make a call, get that answer and come back with a validation of that.
Well, there's really not too much more on the agenda.
You could put
Talk
it
about
to,
what we
you could
look
just
at
put it
the
to a future
information.
month, you could put it to a future month, and you could just come back.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'm hearing today, if there's a cost to it, you're probably not doing it for the next year, because it's not in the budget.
Well, I'm just suggesting if the committee wants to, we're only, next Monday, the budget goes on file, so if there's anything else to add, or I suppose they can do an amendment to the budget and put more dollars into the line that this would be paid out of. I just wanted them to realize that there's nothing to account for it if they would want to move forward next year without putting the dollars in.
Gotcha.
What would be the committee's favor? Pay the bills and then take a short recess while Mike tries to get the information, or just not consider this for 2021?
I will consider it for 2021, but not today. And if we elect to go through with the forensic audit as we go, we can implement it any time after we get all the details and how offensive it's gonna be and all those things. And we can start at any time next year and it doesn't impact the budget. If he negotiates the deal properly.
Right.
And if he can't negotiate the deal properly, then we just have to continue our research and then sometime.
I understand, and you know, I'll get the answer for you certainly by the end of the day today, but, and possibly I could do it sooner here on a break, but, under the circumstance that the process should be one that at least covers its own cost. And if it can guarantee that, that is a more acceptable reality than trying to put some dollars, hard cash in the budget, is what I'm hearing. And that, as you say though, could be done anytime. So even if we don't have the answer today and we get in the next meeting, we have a representative from BMI explain that option is there, you could make a better decision. I don't want to rush a decision or anything like that. So, you know, we could certainly.
Going forward, and they take their 10%, and there's no 9,000 up front.
So it's not a full contingency.
And that would be based on their percent.
Was that, that you make the agenda of the spousal,
Eligibility manager?
eligibility management. So it dealt with spousal incentive program to waive coverage, but
Do you want me to move that to a future month?
if you can,
Which
yeah.
month would you prefer? Like
we'll
move
have
it
that
out to
on
like
the-
January or something?
It could be January, it would be fine. I'd sooner make sure we accomplish the BMI for December.
Beth was also, she texted me, she was trying to speak, and she wasn't sure, she didn't think we could
I
hear
did hear
her.
her try.
She tried, yeah, I don't know if you want to ask her to speak now, I think she wanted to clarify something and she
Yeah,
could.
Beth,
help with
are
it.
you still online?
I am, yeah.
Okay, sorry, didn't hear you earlier. If you'd like to go with your comment.
That's okay. I think we basically just tabled it and just need to clarify some folks with BMI. And I was offering to make a phone call when you guys were discussing the remaining topics, but we'll add it to the December meeting. I think that's what I have in my notes.
That's fine.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to ask, did Brian, did he get on? I just,
Nobody came on.
I sent him a picture of the call-in stuff, he got bounced off of the YouTube, and he was gonna, I think he wanted to say something, so I just sent him the.
Going through the same speaker thing that's on the counter here,
No.
that's different. Where does this, can they interact through you?
Other than if other people,
Yeah.
more than one person talks, then it's really hard to hear.
I'm not sure, he's not saying that he's trying, I said, are you calling it? He's not answering me, so I'm not sure.
Listening to it.
So just to clarify, while we're waiting to see if he tries to,
Okay,
okay, and RX
Can I put you on
innovations, are we gonna
speaker and
just
see
hold
if
on?
everyone can
Is that
hear
the international RX?
Yeah. Is it feasibly?
presented from Melissa was how was this going to be funded? Would the budget have to be approach finance to fund it out of budget? But I'll let Mike give you a quick summary of it.
Yeah.
iPad is on my side, and that's the only way I can be them. So I'm trying to log on the cell phone. I can't figure out how to do the password on my cell phone. But in any regard, I looked at some of it, and we did this audit a couple years. We found like, and they were just, it didn't really cost us, it not really cost us anything. So I'm not really in favor of looking at either audit and start amending the budget every day. So I can do that. Yeah, this is the time to do that. We currently have a general budget and health insurance.
Done more on a paid on a contingency basis, where there may not be any outlay, the way I understand it. So, it would be just the audit firm gets paid. If they find things, there's a specific dollar amount or percentage they get paid. And then if that's okay, I think that's what I would recommend, as you say.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments from the committee? We have the chairman on the line. Tom?
In relationship to the insurance trust, where this is already transpiring, would there be any possibility that this firm would also be interested in that? If it push came to shove, that we could,
That would be out of the realm of this committee's
I
responsibility.
understand, but by combining the two, there could be a greater savings to the county in the long run.
Oh, you mean the trust audit, Tom?
Right, which we already have done.
The trust audit is a financial audit. It's not a medical. I don't know that the firm that we contracted with to do the outside audit for the county and the trust does medical claims audits.
No,
We
it's
would have to
different.
ask them. That's strictly the financials of the county and the trust.
But this isn't, technically, this is done on a monthly basis. This isn't done on an audit type basis. And this is something that's, the.
I just don't know
insurance trust
Lauterbach, I don't know that Lauterbach and Almond does what you're talking about. I know that they're doing this outside one, but I don't know that they're doing that. I'm
No,
not
they
sure
don't,
the scope of their
the
service.
outside audit is completely separate from this. The one that's done,
Tom, that's a matter to be brought up at the insurance trust. It's out of the responsibility of this committee, but I'd like to ask Don, if you have any questions or comments, see that in another week, you'll be making the decisions on this. If you have any input on it.
No, I was wondering if the situation is that, like a one-time process that the audit occurs, or it's an ongoing year to year?
So it could be done, typically it's done once every 3 years, that you do a claims audit, 3 to 5. But the ongoing, there's a process now that is available today that could be monthly, where it's more timely as opposed to chasing money a year later. And that's rather new to the group, in doing that, but it is something kind of interest, just because of the magnitude of the dollars involved. So it's something that we could speak to with the BMI representative next week, or next month, and they could certainly go into the depth of their total scope of services that they're capable of doing, should it make sense.
Yes, Brian, what would be your preference at this point?
Honestly, when we first did it, I was on the stage, we did it, we thought it was feeling good. Like, hey, we're gonna find all the corruption and audit and stuff, got all this, and until here. And I really thought we were like, staying, root out all the problems, then we get the result back, there was a one that our staff is actually doing a good job. So, I mean, I would want to do it, I would figure out how long it on. That's 3 years, 4 years, could we wait a year, or next year? I mean, kind of like, got, I don't know where we get money from, you know, a lot of that. Unless we get finance. So, we got talked to that, it's like, that, I don't see how that is at all. Sorry.
Okay, I appreciate it. Wayne? Melissa?
I just, before my time starting with the county, there was the dependent audit that was done because they audited to be sure that for eligibility audit and that we had the right dependents on versus those that should have aged off or some factor that would not allow them to be on. So we did have that audit. I don't know whether it was a paid for type of audit or it was just done.
It was paid for, and I believe it was 2015. I think that might be what Brian was just speaking of.
So there was one done, but she was Julie feels that we were spot on with accuracy and who should be on the plan and who should not have been on at that time. So there was not much that needed to be changed.
Correct.
So adherence to the plan was being done correctly at that point. So there was one done, so it would have been, 5 years ago then?
2015, I believe it was conducted.
If I recall right, okay, I do recall having the discussion back on eligibility, and you had such strong practices of onboarding that you were able to really kind of mitigate any wrongdoing there. So, yeah, and so if you did and I do recall you saying you had an audit
That
as
doesn't mean
well.
it can't be done again. It was just that it was in 2015. It was very.
So it sounds like it was for dependent,
Yeah.
the dependent view only, not claims activity, accuracy in that process.
Okay, Brian, thanks for your input on that.
Sorry, it's okay, I'll listen to the rest of the meeting.
So would the committee want to have Mike get the information, can get back to Melissa, and then she can just send out an email to inform the committee as to what's going on and possibly put it on the agenda for a virtual presentation for more information at the December meeting.
Yes.
Okay, we seem to have a,
But I prefer to just work on the going forward one as, because of the budget constraints of doing forensic. And then we can see if he's going forward and he starts finding hundreds of thousands of dollars, then we say we got a problem, so is what I'm more interested in than the forensic.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Do you still have to venture into an agreement though with them,
Yeah.
correct? I mean,
Correct.
you still have to create an agreement because they're going to be doing something. It's not
Yeah.
for free.
They may need a foundation. So, let me explore this further, sorry, I should have included the rep today.
okay, we do have it as an agenda item under E, so we can make a motion to have Mike move forward to
Further
possible presentation at our December meeting.
I don't think we have to make a motion.
No, it's just information
Right,
only today.
Okay,
There
we
was
we can just do a.
Give him direction, you're giving him
Just
direction.
In favor of directing it, Mr. Walsh had already nodded that yes before he left. So if you would be in favor of having a presentation or Mike coming back with more information at December. Okay, looks like it is affirmative, so you can come back with that in December.
Very good. Does the report need a approval or anything?
So anything else for the committee?
No, sir.
Any questions for Mike? Okay. If I could have a motion to accept the report and place it on file. By Mr. Faber, second by Ms. Bush. No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Report is on file. And I'd like to remind the committee that there is a change on the December calendar. Instead of third meeting on Friday, December 18th at 11 o'clock, rather than Thursday at 9:30. So you can make a note on your calendar, so if the meeting change.
Yeah.
I'll take this. Thank you.
That's our part of the board meeting.
It's already on the calendar.
No, it's because of scheduling, they have to move the meeting to a Friday at 11 o'clock rather than Thursday at 9:30. It's printed on the calendar, I just want to make everybody be aware of that. Okay. Melissa, anything else the committee
Well, I
needs to be
don't-
made aware of?
I don't have anything.
Julie?
Motion to pay the bills.
Yes.
Yes, we need to pay.
Okay,
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Same to you.
can I get a motion to pay the bills? Moved by Ms. Bush, second by Ms. Pottinger. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Bills are paid, and a motion to adjourn. By Ms. Bush, second by Ms. Pottinger, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 10:40.